Welcome back. Today is a day for Nicole Richards. And today we're going to talk about a very familiar topic, which is quite sometimes in life you wake up and you just don't like where you are. And you've done some amazing things. You've built businesses or led people or have kids and have been a great parent. You have done some things that you're proud of. But one day you wake up and you're like, I don't really like what is happening for me. And maybe you're not even willing to stay there. It's like a point in life where you wake up and you feel like your shoes don't fit anymore. And you're just tired of squeezing your feet in shoes that don't fit. And you're like, all right, I need new shoes, but I have no idea how to get new shoes. That is the point in life today we're speaking to with Nicole Richards, who is coming to us with a lot from the School of Hard Knocks, her own experiences, and a decade of doing this work behind the scenes with clients. Without preempting this topic, let's go to Nicole and uncover step by step what she does, how she does it, and her process of taking you from these shoes are too small, and this is how to fit in the next size without all the drama that can happen. Because some of the things that we do, some of the shoes that we try to fit ourselves in, we can try for 5 years and still want to stay in the same shoe that every time makes our feet bleed. So how do we stop playing small and how do we move forward in life, especially after midlife, when you know that you don't have so much time for guesswork? Like, how do you turn around and build the life that you actually want? Not the life that your parents wanted for you. Not the life that everybody expects you to live, but your life. Doing the things that you want to do, when you want to do them, with who you want to do them. Nicole, I'm excited to be having a conversation today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Prima. I feel like you just rewrote all of my branding. Thank you.
As I was talking, where did you feel like I was going off course? I want you to course correct. I want you to go back and course correct and say, Prima, I don't want to do that and that and that. And today I just want to talk about this because I know you can do a lot, but you're some kind of woman who doesn't want to. So, what would you love to talk about in this conversation? I know I talked a lot and put you in many places, which I know you can be, but you don't have to be today.
No, I actually love the analogy of the shoes. I thought that was fantastic. I just thought to myself, like, there's a person who's got a size 10 foot, and really what they're doing in their life is they're squeezing it into a size 5.
Mm.
And it doesn't work. But they're doing it and they're walking around like that, but it's uncomfortable. And for some people, it's actually ridiculous
Mm.
because they could fit into so much more and be comfortable.
Mm. Tell me about the work you do and who you do it for and why you do what you do.
Well, I have a passion and I have a passion project and I have an obsession.
Mm.
So my passion project is my podcast
Mm.
along with a in-person summit, and they're both called Minding His Business. And so
Oh.
what that is a conversation around life, love, and career that is focused on those who are in the faith and purpose-driven business. So I love having conversations, deep conversations about life and God and how we live our human life with the spiritual components. So that's my passion project. And my obsession is working with my clients. So I'm a personal reinvention coach and human potential specialist. And you drew such a beautiful picture of what I do. I see the potential in people that they don't normally see themselves. And when
Mm.
people get lost on their way to the dreams that they used to have, I
Mhm.
help guide them back and help them figure out where they're going when it comes to life, love, or business.
Mm. When I look at Nicole, the work she does, the way I understand it is we're all born with dreams and aspirations, but along the way, we started playing small. We started doing things we didn't want to do, and we ended up in a place we don't want. But what if you could reverse all of that? That's what she's calling reinnovation. What if you could reset and just start all over again? Would that be worth something to you? Because we've spent our lifetime doing things, learning things, some for us, some no. But what if we had to go back and just reset? How quickly would we rebuild? Because I believe we could do it maybe in a quarter of the time. But we're often too scared to do it because we don't know where to start and how to go. I wonder what's your story?
What's my story with that resetting and rebuilding?
Mm-hmm,
Well, I was a makeup artist
mm-hmm,
and I had a team of 15 artists and I had a makeup studio and I was in I call it my Michael Jordan era.
mm-hmm,
Things were great. Business hit six figures. I had a great team, great clients. Then you start working with all the people you wished, like you could only dream you were working with. Then published in magazines, was going great. I had two children under the age of six. Got my makeup studio, and my son was sorry, I was pregnant with him. I was 8 months pregnant when I actually got the keys to my studio. But I had a beautiful 22-year career as a makeup artist. And one day I had the perfect client who just did everything that I asked her to do. And when I got in my car with a nice fat tip, I'm looking at this money in my hand and I'm thinking, I don't want to do this anymore. And that thought really scared me because it was my whole career. I didn't, not only was it my career, but I defined myself by
mm-hmm,
this business that I was actually running. And I didn't know how I was going to change that around. So I still continued on but I was still having this nagging feeling that I needed to do something different. And I call that like these conversations I was having with God, where I feel like he was telling me to make some changes. And I was like a child stamping back saying, no, I won't do it. Not going to do it. And one day I did give in. I was angry and I gave in and I said, fine, I will shut my business down. I voluntarily did that because I felt a divine intervention, which sounded crazy at the time because I had no clue how I was going to make any money. Um, so that was in 2018. It took me some time to wind my business down
mm-hmm,
because people were booking for weddings, and weddings can be booked a year and a half to 2 years in advance. And by December, New Year's Eve, December 2019, about a year and a half after I decided I was not going to do this anymore, I did my last wedding, and that was it. And Prima, do you remember what happened 3 months later after New Year's Eve,
mm-hmm.
2019?
No.
You don't remember? Did COVID
COVID?
not come to did COVID not come to where you are? Were you the only country that didn't have it?
That's a
COVID.
joke. COVID was COVID.
So in Canada, we had very strict lockdowns, and the wedding industry was completely decimated. We could not have any in-person gatherings. Funerals were even just 10 people were allowed, and we weren't allowed to do anything. Let's put it that way. And many people lost their businesses, but I had shut mine down willingly a couple of
Mm,
months before. So I saw the large bullet that I dodged. And like, still, when I was shutting my business down, I was thinking of like, what am I going to do next?
mm,
And I joke a lot that I got my psych degree. It took me 20 years listening to women plan their weddings, and I got my psych degree. That's my long-standing joke. Because when you are listening to women talk about hair and makeup and how they look, there's a lot of behavioral and thought process
mm,
things that you can take in. And I listened a lot. I listened a
mm,
lot. And so coaching was a natural fit for me. I love talking about business. I love talking about life. I love talking about how people can get from here to there. And I've always
mm,
been like that. So coaching was a natural fit for my personal reinvention. But Prima, I could probably make it sound very romantic, but it was messy and it was hard and it was challenging because you have to change your mindset when you're being asked to level up.
mm. It reminded me of COVID because I had a store like I was fashion stylist, something like that. And I knew that I needed to close the business, but I was just stubborn. I was like, close the business. I didn't want to go back to a job, which I had quit like years and years. And I was like, well, I'm supposed to close this and do what? I didn't know. And so I kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it. And then COVID came and gave me a slap. And I woke up in my house with a store full of stuff from China, wherever we just stocked, with tens of thousands of dollars in stock, and no one was allowed to go no place. I sat in my house with no money and I asked myself, like, really? Could it occur to me that I could lose this business? And in that moment, I began playing back the tape and seeing what I had started doing, which was like picking interest in Tony Robbins, Oprah, and all of these things and listening to them. I'm stuck in Uganda. The internet is terrible. Everything is just against my favor. And I'm like, okay, God, are you asking me to like do this online stuff? And I am so scared to death. But then when COVID hit, it was like permission to just step forward with the thing that I was feeling called to do, which I would never have done if COVID never happened.
Yeah.
And so
Do
you talk
you
about COVID, and I do not know what was happening, but for me, it was a slap from God to say, I want you to stop this business right now and go online. But I would never have done it because I had no internet and my phone was, I don't know, I don't know, weird phone which couldn't scroll. And then my computer was an old HI, I don't know. And no one would buy my stuff. And I mean, who would care to learn from a Ugandan, which the only thing in the country is starving children. Like I was like, all these things say I cannot do this. And God was like, really? I'm going to show you. A good slap. And I was in my room with nothing. You can't go nowhere. You can't do anything. But the internet is working. So what are we going to do? And so I like how we're sharing that because COVID was a gift to many. So now you come to coaching and walk me through that process of re-innovation from being a makeup artist to now coaching people reinvent their lives. Like, what did that process look like? Your own re-innovation from makeup artist to coach.
from makeup artist to coach? Well, I had to take it from the perspective that I have always been coaching. Once you have a team
Mm,
of people that you have
mm,
to lead,
mm,
I was already in that sphere. The
mm,
difference is, Prima, that I was seeing people in person all the time. And
mm,
then going online and making that connection with people online, I would say that was a little bit difficult because I like to, there's a different energy when you're in front of somebody.
mm,
Um, but you're able to meet more people. You're able to help more people. And so my own personal reinvention was the thought process of what could I do for the next 20 or 30 years that I think I would really enjoy doing the whole time? And
mm,
I love talking about business. I love talking about life. I love talking about God and how you know how the Bible works within our life. And I thought, yeah, I think I can do this coaching thing. I think I can have conversations. And then, of course, the coaching and those conversations morphed into the podcast and having those conversations. Um, and, I think you and I are a lot alike. We're curious about people and we're curious about how people do things.
yeah,
So I think that my thought process on how I could go about it was
mm,
pretty simple. The part that I most likely got a little stuck on that I needed more work and cheerleading and had to have my own coach was really going out with my message and how I'm just going to get my message out to other people that I wanted to have these conversations. And so that was the growth point. The growth point
mm,
was switching from marketing and overall business that had a group of people working for it to now I was the business. And it was
mm.
just me and my voice and my face and my thought process and putting that out into the world. And my coach had a lot of work to do with me on that.
The blocks, the identity shifts, I can't imagine. There is people I meet today who have gifts. Maybe they're healers or they have some gifts. But they've done this offline for years and years. They've just done it for their family. And they've never given themselves permission to say, I do this and I'm here to help the world. And when they're coming to the world, there is such resistance. And especially when it comes to charging and putting a price on things and saying, this is what I do, there's such a block, such a resistance that I struggle with. Give me an idea how you help such a person who wants to move from I'm just a mom and I just have these kids to now I'm a healer and I'm a channel and I'm going to help people maybe connect with their intuition or I'm going to heal the world. Like, how do you transition from one identity to another? Or maybe it's somebody who's had a job for 20 years and now they've lost a job and they're supposed to start a new career. Or maybe it's a woman who's been married and now she's suddenly single after 40 years. Or maybe it is something else. A mother who's been a mother all her life and she wakes up and she's an empty nester. How do you transition from that to a place where you can say, okay, I am now embodying this new thing and I'm going forward and everything is in the past? How do we go through that? Because it's very hard sometimes to let go of an old identity.
Oh, it is. It is.
Mm,
And so okay, you've mentioned a couple, you mentioned like three things there. The one
mm,
first that you mentioned was the money block. Um, it's really important when I work with my clients, if I have a client that has a money block where they feel like they can't ask people to pay for the thing that they're
mm,
offering,
mm,
um, I this is where the curious questions come in because I want to know where that comes from. I want to know what they think about money, how they
mhm,
work with it. Are they
mhm,
that person who thinks if they just put money out, if they just pay for things, the money will just come back to them? Or do they have a scarcity mindset in thinking that, well, if I pay for that, the money's not going to come back, so I'm just not going to spend the money? Because you get people
mhm,
on different sides. And so we work with figuring out where their thought process with money comes from. And if they have a thought process of lack,
mm,
I'm not I'm not the easiest person to work with. I'm like only my clients have to be willing to stretch if they work with me. So I
mhm,
had a client who had trouble asking for what she wanted. She got stuck at a certain number. So what we did is I said, okay, the next time you have a client, I'd like you to increase that increment by just $100. Just start there. And
mhm,
you wouldn't believe the no, I can't do that. And I have, all of that, all of those things. And so one day she called me and she said, I did it. I asked for $100 more. You did? How did you do that? Like, what did you say? And she said, you know what? I wrote it down on a piece of paper and just stuck it on the wall. And when I had the sales call, I looked up at the paper and there was the price. So I just said it. And I said, well, how did you told me that you felt like you were, ripping somebody off by charging a certain amount. How did you get past that? And she said, I just said it. So I wish I had like a magical thought process in this, but really it is little increments and you have to just do the work. And so she said once she did that tiny increment of $100, because really it should have been like $1,000. She
mm,
said that she just every time somebody would call, she would just increase the price incrementally until she actually got to what she wanted to do. And it actually just got easier. She was
mm,
shocked that the first person said yes. And then the second person said yes. And now we didn't have a problem anymore. there was no problem after the second one. And she got to her goal. So money blocks are interesting things, but you have to know where the block comes from, where the thought process comes from before you can start to work on it.
mm,
And then you said something about a person who loses their job
mhm,
and their identity was tied to their job. And I had a lot of that. My identity was tied to the fact that I was a master airbrush makeup artist with a team of 15 the business made six figures, and I had a makeup studio. And when the studio went away,
mm,
and when I feel like God told me that the business needed to go away, And then unfortunately, my marriage ended. So that title of being a wife also went away. I only had one title left, which was mother. And praise God, that title still got that one. We want to keep that one. But the other two titles went away. And I very much defined myself by those two titles. So to
Mm.
get to your question, when a title that they define themselves by, this was the majority of their identity, and now that is no longer there, what do they do and who do they become?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first thing that I actually advise people to do, I ask them, have you cried over this loss yet? And I've had some clients say, yes, I've been crying for 2 months. And I've had some clients say, no, I don't need to really, you need to give yourself a chance to mourn the loss of who you thought you were going to be. And
Mm.
until you can do that, however you're going to do it, go take a boxing class, go to the shooting range, curl up in bed and cry, however that works for you. But you do have to mourn the loss of who you thought you were going to become. And so
Mm.
we do work into that. And I ask questions and I bring up those emotions and feelings. And Prima, sometimes people will say, what do you do for a living? And I want to say, I make people cry. Because once I start to bring up those questions about who you thought you were going to be and you're able to
Mm.
mourn that loss, now now is where we can start the work. Now we can start to build who you're going to be. And it's not going to be the identity is not going to be a job title or something that can be taken from you. Now going to work on the identity of who God created you to be, the potential of who you were created to be. And that's the real work that we get to once we get rid of all the top layers.
I really like what you said about the money blocks. Like the first breakthrough is to identify them and where they're coming from, and understand that this is energetically a block to money. And once it's in front of you, now you can kind of find ways around. I like that because it's really even less of, sometimes it's even less of the release work and more of, oh, now I see this and I see how it shows up and I see where it's coming. Just the awareness of a block or the awareness that you may be sitting in front of your own self or, I don't know, in the way. Then regards the identity, the ability to accept that something is gone. Like that identity is gone. It's served and now it's gone. And accepting to let go sometimes can be everything. I want you to give me an idea how this rebuilding of self can help someone in business.
How the rebuilding of self. Well, depending on the business, you are the business.
Mm.
Like you are the business. If you don't have a clear identity, it comes out in your branding. It
Mm-hmm.
comes out in how you deal with clients. It comes
Mm-hmm.
out in how much you can charge. It comes out in like the networking and the partners that you build. So it's important that you have a clear vision of who you want to be. And I would love to say that that happens, like we can just figure that out in the next month or two, but it's a process.
Mm.
It's a process and steps and day by day. Most of the clients that I have worked with recently, I've noticed a trend. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they like. Most adults don't have hobbies. And so now we're really starting at square one. And then if they like something, they often question themselves as to whether they should do that or if they like that or will that hobby be good enough. And so they're, they are, a lot of people aren't used to making life decisions without the input of other people, and they need the permission to just make the decision.
Mm. As you were speaking, I was remembering that you are the personal brand, and to say that we can separate you from the business is wishful thinking. And so, whether we like it or not, your personal life and your business as a personal brand do not separate. your stuff comes up in business, whether you willingly want or not. So if you're going through some stuff behind the doors, it's going to show up in business. And one of the things that can get you really stuck in business is being disconnected in your own life. Having other parts of your life falling apart and thinking you're just going to show up and play professional in business. We can energetically feel, we can see through it, and it just doesn't attract the people that you're after. And so I love the work that Nicole does, because once you rebuild yourself and can connect your own self, now you give permission to the right people to come. I don't know if you can build on that, but there is a place for you and the relationship you have with yourself and the wrap you have around your own identity and trajectory of where you're going, to the people who are going to follow you and the people who are going to hire you, and how that comes together. Nicole, do you want to give us more to that? Because I feel like the better you are, or the more at peace you are with where you are in your life, the better the business you can build. And sometimes you're stuck not because you need strategy, but because you need to reconcile and maybe rebuild your own cocoon of life. Does that make sense?
No, it does. I've had, well, I guess with my own experience, I was trying to build an empire with a faulty foundation. So my marriage wasn't going well, and I was building and building and building, and I eventually burnt out because I wasn't myself able to carry this thing that I was building, even though it was going well. But as you were talking, I was thinking of, I don't know why Steve Jobs came to mind, but if a person were to do a little bit of research into who Steve Jobs was, you can actually use the products that his company made, and you can see those details of him within those products. I worked for a large cosmetic company. And I'm going to leave the name out, but I worked for a large cosmetic company. And if you were to do some research on the person who started the company, this person, she was a woman, she was strong-willed, she was very driven. And the behind of the scenes of the company, even though she had long passed away, could still be felt within the fabric of the company. The person who starts the company is always the brand. It's a spiritual thing. It is also written just physically into the branding. You are the brand, regardless of whether you're going to build a McDonald's or you're going to do one-on-one coaching. And so you're right. The more that a person can identify with who they are from a spiritual perspective, and also just from a personal perspective, what they want to accomplish, who they want to work with, what they want their business to look like and feel like. It's very important that you know those answers, and you don't just put up a sign and put up a website and pick some colors, but know what is the heart of the brand that you're building, and it really should be your heart.
And if you don't know what the heart looks like, or where it's going, or what it wants, then what are we building? Where are we going even? And why should anyone come?
That is a good question. Why should anybody be bought in if you're not even bought in?
The reason some of us, my husband likes to tease me. He says, you have a podcast called The World Best Kept Secret, but I think some of your people should just remain secrets until they know what they're doing. And I'm like, okay, maybe he has a point. Like, the reason we might be in this best kept secret place is that maybe we just need to stay there until until we're taking people somewhere. Because sometimes you really are not sure where you're going, and yet you want people to come and follow you. But if you're not careful, you'll drown them with you because you're not sure where you're going. I like that. I know that you are someone who is spiritual, and I want to ask you a question, which is like, how do you take this faith, this belief that if we do the work, the result will come, this belief that the how does not belong to us, and all of these tangible beliefs that people call woo, and how do we inject action? How do we make what is your process of taking the invisible, the faith, the God, and kind of putting it in a way that you don't stay in wishful thinking? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
How do you bridge your wool with actual doing of the work that needs to be done for things to move?
So there's a scripture in the Bible that says faith without works is dead. Okay,
Mm.
so there's no magical Jesus coming to just poof, poof, you have a website and poof, there's 10 customers at your door. Someone actually has to do the work and that someone is going to be you.
Mm.
Right? So if we go back to what you were saying, your husband said something actually very he said something very interesting. Tell him I said that, okay? He said something very interesting that some people should stay the best kept secret. You know what? I think in humanity we are creatures that want to help.
Mm.
We're people really, and there are people that have such a big heart to help. Um, and we're inventive. So we come up with ideas as to how we can help people.
Mm.
But if you haven't gone through the process of your own reinvention, your own work, doing the hard
Mm.
work besides putting up a website, but actually creating change in your own life, however you're saying you're going to help
Mm.
your clients, then it's really important that you put yourself through that work so that you really know how to help people. People can go through, there's all certificate kinds of certifications that someone can take to do all kinds of things to help people, but they haven't really done the work themselves. Um, and even if I take this to back to my wedding days, there were women that they would hire a wedding planner. They loved the experience of having a wedding planner. They loved the experience of planning their wedding, and they loved it so much that they became wedding planners. They became event planners. And for some people, that doesn't work. Like
Mm.
it wasn't this dream that you had. It wasn't this thing that you may have went to school for, like way back when. You didn't plan anything ever in high school or in life, but you took a course and now you're an event planner. I've seen that a lot. And so if someone has an idea of a business or something that they want to do, it's really important that you really go through the process yourself and put yourself through a process of growth and
Mm.
working on your own mindset to make sure that you can really help the people you say that you can help.
You bring a very good point because a lot of people I work with have a problem, which is I want to help my future client. And I'm like, okay, you really want to help that person, but right now, I feel like you can help this person. And I do not know how we can give this out, but I want people to understand that sometimes we just need to help the person who is like 10 steps. Does
Mhm.
that make sense? So you're here, but really the person who needs the work is over here. But most people are here and they want to help the person who is here. And a lot of times you're really not getting paid because you have the wrong target person who does not see you.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
haven't embodied, you're like, mother had one child. Now you're teaching mothers how to be parents. I'm not saying you can't.
And your child is only 1 years old.
I'm not saying you can't, but maybe, maybe you're better off helping people through the experience of their first pregnancy. I don't know if I can explain this to you properly. When I first started in 2020, when I got thrown online, God said, you have to go online. And I was like, what do I do? I'm very interested in marriages and I've read so many books and I really studied a lot of marriages. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll talk about marriage and relationships. There's one problem. I was single. I wasn't even dating. And I started a business and I said, I'm going to show you how to, I don't know, deal with relationships. And to my husband's point, that is someone who should just stay kept a secret because what did I know about marriage? Now that I'm married, I'm like, oh my God, I can't even see myself talking about marriage because of
But you
how
know,
much I have to learn.
But Priba, you know what you could have done because your heart wanted to have these conversations. And the way that you could have helped people was you could have had conversations with marriage specialists, right? And you would
Mm,
just facilitate those conversations, but you wouldn't have been the specialist because you weren't married long enough to be to give that advice. But there's lots of people who have, and doctors
mm.
and everybody with the credentials, and you could have brought those people into your sphere. So there's different ways that people can help. You don't always have to be the specialist. You can facilitate the conversations without saying that you are giving the actual advice.
It's funny because the way I did it is I actually did it was called something men, real men, real answer, I don't know, something. So I got men and I interviewed them about women. And then I took that and reported on that. But for some reason, I wanted to be the expert who also knew about it. It was just messed up. But some people are still doing this, Prima. You're not married, but you want to help married stay married. Oh, no, I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just saying, are you doing something like that? Are you trying
Yes.
to help people through something that you haven't figured out? You know?
That is the
And,
trouble with the internet because there are people who say, "Oh, I'm going to help you make six and seven, eight-figure
and they
business,"
haven't made
and
them.
they've never even run, they've never run a business. They have absolutely no clue how to do that.
So some of that is there. Like, I don't even know what was inside me, but I still do want to do this at some point. This time I want to give myself the chance to experience marriage, the ups and downs and everything in between, and then document that for whoever can benefit from it. Sometimes it's just too early for the thing you're trying to do. Like it was too early for me to teach about marriage because everything I taught was theory. I had read it and it sounded nice and I was teaching it. But really, I hadn't experienced marriage. I wasn't even married. I wasn't even dating. And so sometimes the business can be stuck, your message can be really stuck in a pipe because you're creating that message from an island. You're
Mhm.
imagining, you are trying to be as cool as the other expert. What you forget is the other expert is drawing from their bone, from their school of hard knocks, from their tears and frustrations, and you are drawing from an island, literally, like you are imagining. And so everything you're doing doesn't land because it's created on an island. And I think that is, I'm pointing that back to the work Nicole does, which is you need to reassess. And I don't know how I can tie it exactly, but sometimes you need to reassess and start from the place where you are the expert today. I am a very spiritual person. I have done a lot of spiritual work, but I don't claim to teach spirituality. My expertise is your message and how to get paid from it. That's what I've done. That's what I know. I might become a spiritual expert at some point, but right now, it's not my desire to become a spiritual expert. Right now, I just want to help people get clear of their message and get paid. And that is okay. I do not know. What else is it about the work you do, Nicole, that if we didn't talk about in this conversation, we would have done injustice to your work, the work you do, especially
Um,
for the business owner, because the audience is business owners.
I want people to remember, like, there's a lot of talk about being authentic and being your authentic self. And I feel like some of those words
Mm,
have been beat over the head like way too many times.
mm,
But each of us is created unique. God created you with a whole toolbox in your life and your experiences that I don't have. And I've got some things that you don't have. And there is such a beauty in digging up what those unique experiences and gifts and talents are, but it can also be really scary. And so if there's anybody out there that, would like to have those deeper conversations about where they've come from, but where they want to go, I have a methodology, a process that I call the ultimate life audit, where it is an audit. You can be audited for your taxes, but you really should be on a quarterly basis doing a light audit on your life. And then at the end of the year, doing a full audit on your life. And if you feel like you're not working towards the dreams that you have, whether it's in life, love, or business, I would love to have like a great conversation with you about how we can move you forward and make that happen.
What did the audit look like? What are some of the questions we're asking here? I would love for someone to try and do it on their own if they can, if they got a chance of being on this podcast. Like, what are
Mhm.
the questions someone can begin to ask themselves to understand if they are being true to who they are? Like, I like to say, stop being authentic and just start being you. Like, what
Just
are
start being
some
you.
of those questions that we can ask ourselves to check where we are? Like, if this was a weighing scale of am I being me
Mhm.
or am I being the version of me that I want people to see? What are
Mhm.
some of those questions we can begin to ask ourselves to kind of land on that?
I'm going to give Tony Robbins a little bit of credit, okay? I went to one of his
Mm,
events many years ago and he has this analogy of whose hamburger are you eating?
mm,
So he says basically most people are eating a hamburger that was introduced to them by a parent or somebody that they trusted. And when I
mm.
sat back, I thought, wait a minute, I've been eating a hamburger the way that my mother eats a hamburger. Like these are the ingredients and but my hamburger looks like hers. And that is actually how we start to build our lives. That's his point. We build our lives based on the things that were modeled to us. And
Mm,
so even if when I started to do my own life audit, do you remember when people said they wanted to have a laptop lifestyle and just be able to work from anywhere?
mhm,
Well, I thought that sounded really good. But when I actually sat and said to myself, what do I really want? I don't want to do that. I don't
mm,
want to work. I don't want to work from Bali or Thailand, or if I'm going to be in those places, I don't want to do any work, right?
mm,
And so we can get ideas from, yes, our family and our conditioning, but the
mm,
internet is also full of ideas. So to answer your
mm,
question, one of the questions somebody can ask is, what do I really want? What do I really want? How do I really want to work? How do I really want to love? How do I really
mm,
want to be loved? And with my clients, we go back to those questions over and over and over again because we need to get the conditioning out of them. If you had
mm,
asked me when I was married, what is it that I wanted? I would have a list of things. And then I realized I actually don't want any of those things. That's
mm,
not I was building a life based on what other people said worked for them, and it sounded really good. So, how do I want to work? How do I want to live? How do I want to love? And how do I want to be loved? And revisit those questions. Those are some of the things that I work with my clients on to make sure
mm.
what they're saying is really what they actually want.
That's a good one. Whose hamburger are you eating? Whose business are you building? Whose marriage are you in?
Whose marriage are you in? Ooh, I'm gonna write that one down.
Whose
That's
marriage are
good.
you in? Because the marriage you're in may not even be the marriage that you chose or you wanted.
Mhm. And then if it's not, then I don't necessarily say that everybody needs to get divorced, but what are you going to do to fix it? Who are you going to become to fix it? Because you can't change the other person, right? So again, what is it that you want and what are you going to do to fix your own life?
I really like the thought of asking the question, like, who's who's holding the microphone? And you can just go and drop in all departments of your life and say, who's holding the microphone here? Is this me? Did I create this? Do I want this? I think that can be a good rain check to go, oh my God, like, whose idea was it for me to have 8 kids? And whose idea was it for me to be wife number three? And whose idea was it for me to even be doing this business, which I'm doing? And I'm not saying go and do something about everything, but it really helps to sit down and say, whose idea was it that I had to even dress like this?
Okay,
You'll be
so
surprised.
if somebody has wife number three, is wife number three, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that. I know in some cultures that does does happen. But here's the thing, Prima, those questions, they're good, but The one thing I should say, I would be irresponsible to not say this. When you start asking these questions, you will bring up a lot of emotions. So it is actually, if you're not working with a coach, it's good to do that with somebody who will listen. You don't need any advice. You don't need any extra voice, but to do it with somebody who will listen, because there can be a lot of grief that comes up when you realize whose idea was it to have to be wife number three, and you realize that's not necessarily what you were looking for, or the business that you built that's now seven figures, but they call it golden handcuffs. You're kind of like, you feel like you're a little bit stuck, right? So be aware that emotions can come up, and it's okay to have those emotions as you grieve this life that you build, that you realize, oh, I might need to make some changes.
Mhm. I shared that story because my grandfather had more than one wife. And I like to talk to my auntie who tells me about how I was always telling him off at three. Because my real grandmother, who is a mother of my dad, would cook food, and my granny wouldn't eat it because there was wife number two and three who, I don't know. And then I would take the food to him and he wouldn't eat. And I would tell him, oh, really early at three. And he would say, all right, I'll take a spoon or two. Because I used to say, if you don't eat this food, I'm going to tell grandma not to cook again. You have no idea how much time she spent making this food for you to say you already ate. Do you have any idea how intimidating that is? And I was a kid at three. And so my auntie always tells me that when I was a kid, I was like, I just always spoke my truth. And so if you're wife number three, I have nothing against you. It is really just me looking at my granddad and saying, whose idea was it for the
You know,
third
that
wife
concept
woman?
of wife number three, though, can come up in so many different, it can come up in so many different ways, where you're the one on the back burner and
Yeah.
you've allowed that, you've lived like that, and you've allowed that. Um, that is, I like that.
Where in your life are you tolerating things you don't want? Where in your life are you settling? And I'm not saying go do something, but these questions can raise appetite for a new change. And Nicole is here. You need someone to talk to. She's here. This is what she does. But in what area of your life are you holding someone else's hamburger and eating that? And you just don't like the taste of it, you know? Um, I know we have to end here. Is there anything you want to say as final words? Because I know we have like a hard stop now. But is there anything you want to say for like words of encouragement that you can leave with us?
Yeah, you know, when it comes to like personal reinvention or digging up your human potential and figuring out what you can do, it's a
Mm-hmm.
process.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way of life. This is a lifestyle. It's not a thing we're going to do, you know, and you're going to figure it all out in a month or two. You are now rebuilding the rest of your life. And if we can look at life more as a journey than a destination, it changes everything.
Yeah. And it takes one step. You don't need to take the giant leap steps, big steps. It takes one step, $100. And then tomorrow, $100 more. And before you know it, you've increased your price by 1,000, and people are still happily paying and even paying more attention. That is how you know you're terribly undercharged. The best thing you can do when you come to this podcast is, would you kindly stop and think who in my life needs to discover this podcast? This is a podcast for people who have amazing, amazing work, but they are not the famous Tony Robbins right now. And so, what we want to do on this podcast is talk through the work and hopefully get the right people to access the work, the message, so they can stop being a secret, because the work is life altering if discovered. And so, what you can do for me is think in your life one person who needs to hear this conversation and share it with them. Nicole Richards is on social media, and I would love for you to go follow her. I would like for you to go learn more about her work. And you can also go on her website, Nicole, which is
It's NicoleRichards.co, and also on LinkedIn, NicoleRichards.co, and also on Instagram, the same.
Nicole Richards .co. That is it from us today. Thank you for paying attention and for being with us today. Nicole, thank you for being such a great guest. I appreciate you coming to the show.
Thank you, Prima. Always great conversation with you.
All righty.